What is up, my friend? Welcome to number 87 of the Anthony John Amick's podcast. And today I decided I'm going to go off script and just shoot this thing on the fly and talk about the power of speaking your truth. So if you've ever been one of these people who's wondered, like, man, is it really important for me to speak my mind? Is it really important to really like say what's on my mind? Like, is it, or should I just withdraw? I would encourage you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Anthony John Amick's podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amick. My friends call me AJ, and my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
All right, welcome back. Now, before I hop into today's topic, which is probably going to turn more into a rant, but we will get into some wisdom. Inside that rant, I want to tell you about my book called Mindset is Not Enough. You can get the whole entire book for free by going to ajamick's.com/book, and that book will help you unleash your inner seven-figure entrepreneur and help you create lasting transformation in every single area of your life in 90 days or less. So I would highly encourage you to grab that book because it dives deep into what it actually takes to create lasting success. So again, just go grab it, ajamick's.com/book. So let's get into today's topic, the power of speaking your truth. So I had a guy call me today, and I got a text and said, hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? And typically when I get a text from somebody I know that's like, hey, do you have time, a few minutes to chat, there's a reason. It's not just like, hey, you want to hang out and talk? There's like usually a problem. And so I was like, hey, what do you got going on? And he like called. So immediately I knew like, hey, something's going down. And I was like, yo, bro, like what's going on? He goes, man, I call you because I know you'll shoot me straight, and you have a way of like just like cutting out all the nonsense and just getting right to the point and helping me see things. I was like, all right. So I already knew like this conversation's going to be a fascinating conversation. And he's like, hey, there's this incident that happened at my wife's work where one of these dudes who work with her grabbed her ass and grabbed her boobs, and there's a big part of me that's really angry. And I was like, yeah, man, I could see how you'd be very angry. If I was in your shoes, that happened to my wife, I would be pretty hot myself. And he goes, but I just don't know what to do, man. I don't know. I've already went out. I have punched the punching bag for 15 minutes until my arms were noodles. And I was like, well, good job, bro. Like harnessing your rage in a good way. He's like, I've locked up all of my guns so I don't do something stupid. And I was like, well, that's wise. He's like, so I don't know what to do. And he's like, what do I do, man? And I said, hey, here's the thing I'll have you consider. This is pretty messed up. And the reality is this experience is your wife's experience. And it's going to come down to, what does she want to do? And he's like, well, she's afraid to get fired, and she doesn't really want to rock the boat. And this is where I told him, I said, let me give you a little bit of observation from an outside perspective to this thing. This thing is working together for the good of all things. Your wife's going to have an opportunity to claim her voice, to stand up for what's right. He's like, I get that, but she's afraid. And in that moment of hearing that, there's a part of me that was really filled with anger too. Anger because we live in a culture where people are afraid to stand for their truth, for the values. Like in this woman's case, it infuriates me that there's a culture that has been created inside a company who will not stand for what's right, where the women in their company know, hey, if I'm sexually harassed, the company's going to have my back. I remember this story from my grandmother. My grandmother died a couple years ago, and she was a corporate executive at an ad agency. I won't mention any names of the ad agency. And she used to work for like Bell, like on campaigns for Bell Helicopter and things of that nature. She And she was like really immersed in a male world. This was in the 70s and 80s in the advertising world. And I asked her one day, I called her Boomal. I said, hey, Boomal, I said, were you ever like sexually harassed in the game that you played in the game of advertising? And she goes, oh, yes, honey. And my grandmother, she was a very feisty, fiery, redheaded woman. She goes, oh, yes, honey. I was walking down the hall one day at this advertising agency I worked at, and this guy came up to me in the hallway and grabbed my ass, and I immediately turned around and grabbed him by the balls, and I said, if you want to keep these, I recommend that you never grab my ass again. And she said, I said that in front of the entire office, everybody that was in the hall, everybody heard it. And she said that was the day that entire office knew where Barbara Sutton stood. And I never had an issue from that day forward. And my grandmother always had an issue with this whole hashtag Me Too movement, where women and men would come forth and say, oh, I was sexually harassed or abused, whatever, me too, me too, me too. And my grandmother's beef was, and again, this isn't, fuck it. I'll just go down this path. Some people are going to be pissed off at this. My grandmother's beef with this was, why didn't people stand up in the moment? Just like my grandmother. Somebody grabbed her ass. She turns around, grabs him by the balls and said, if you want to keep these, I recommend you never grab my ass again. And I don't get this in today's society, men or women, where if something happens, why not stand for it? And I get the argument. The argument is like, well, I could lose my job. Well, at the end of the day, like, is money more important than our fucking souls, our values that we have that are, we could either adopt them, they're passed down upon us, whatever, like the values that we choose as sovereign creators. Why would anyone who is a sovereign creator, who believes in their ability to create, not stand for their truth? And there's a part of me that gets fired up and infuriated by this. And some people may say, well, AJ, you're not a woman, you don't understand. And they're right, I'm not a woman, and I don't fully understand. But what I do understand is speaking the truth at all cost. And the reality for this woman in this situation, she actually has more power than she ever imagines. Like, what's going to happen? She goes to HR, she files a written complaint and says, hey, this dude sexual harassed me. What is the company going to do? Oh, you're fired? Well, now she has a bigger case to then take the company to litigation to stand for truth. Oh, well, I don't want to rock the boat. No, the truth is you're afraid to be seen. You're afraid to claim your voice in this situation. And man, it saddens me that as a society, so many people live in fear. Fear of they need to make money or whatever their story is, rather than standing for what's right. And here's what's even more disgusting about this situation. There were other men standing by in this scenario who didn't take a stand. Like, I know if I was in that environment and saw this happen, I'd be like, what the fuck? And I would go confront the man. It's not even my wife. It doesn't matter. It's like, there are certain things that are right and there are certain things that are wrong. And when things are wrong, all people, in my opinion, must take a stand for what's right. And yet, in the grand scheme of things, here comes this guy who calls me and says, what do I do? And the thing I know about all of this, the good in all of this, is there such a thing? The good in all of this is it's giving people an opportunity to take a stand for their values. And if they want to choose those values, they can stand. If they don't want to take a stand, they can be quiet. And so, like, why am I telling you this story? Because every single day things are happening. I'm using an extreme example now of a person who's being sexually harassed and choosing to not take a stand currently. But inside your marriage, inside your business, inside your friendships, there's things that you're not taking a stand for. There's things that it's just more comfortable to settle for mediocrity. It's more comfortable to just ride the status quo than it is to take a stand for what's right. To take a stand for your desires. One of my desires recently is I wanted to put my daughter inside school. There was a part of me that didn't want to have that conversation with my wife because I knew of the repercussions of that conversation. I knew it was going to be an intense conversation. And yet I still chose to lean into that, to speak my truth, because if I didn't, resentment is going to build inside my marriage. And I value connection in our marriage more than resentment. So I was like, hey, babe, from now on, I want to find like a school or bring the nanny back or something where Zyra can have like school or whatever. And I have 2 to 4 hours of my day back just to produce and honor my desires. It's what I desire. It's what I want to experience. I'm telling you this vulnerably because there's things inside your life, inside your business, desires that you have where you get to speak your truth. And just like this woman who is afraid to speak her truth, what's happening in the grand scheme of things is she's robbing this man of growth. Like, there is massive power when we actually speak our truth, even if it's offensive. Because at the end of the day, we're grown-ass people. One day, humanity's going to wake up to this. Like, there's that old saying we had when we were kids, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, for somehow in the game of humanity right now, words seem to fucking hurt people, and it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be cognitive of the words that we're using, because once we say words, like, we can't take them back. There is truth to that, so there's a paradox. There's a way to be responsible in being able to communicate, but withholding truth is robbing people of their growth, and it's robbing those who are withholding from their own growth because they're afraid to wield their power. So what do we do about this? Well, part of this is understanding the game of relationships, the game of being a human is messy. I tell my students all this all the time inside Project Shift when we get into communications and getting out of drama. I tell them all of the time. Part of learning to communicate, part of like wielding our own power as a human being, is it's kind of like jujitsu. Meaning the only way that you go from a white belt to a black belt is you have the courage and you have the willingness to show up for the training, have the courage and the willingness to get on the mat and start rolling. And as a result, when you start rolling, you're going to get your ass kicked. There's times you're going to be submitted. There's times you're going to submit other people. And if you just stay in the game and you stay as a student, you keep learning, you keep growing, you keep showing up, and you don't judge how messy it is, you just keep showing up and you keep rolling, you keep getting your ass kicked, get better. Like, you get better, and eventually you're a black belt, and you're good. And even as a black belt doesn't mean that some days you don't get your ass kicked. You do. The game of learning to communicate, the game of owning and speaking our truth to humanity, inside our lives, inside our marriages, to our kids, to our wives, to our husbands, to our employees, to shareholders, whatever. Part of it is understanding it's going to be messy. Just like this woman. She has a messy situation on her hands. There's no right or wrong on how she navigates it. The only thing that I hope and pray for her is that she comes to a place where she speaks her truth and creates whatever she desires, whether that's filing a formal complaint, whether that's going into litigation. Like, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is a person is speaking their truth. So when they go to bed at night, they can be home and comfortable in their own skin. And as a result, they know who they are, which is a sovereign creator capable of creating anything that's a genuine desire within their hearts. And at the same time, not robbing humanity of the gift to grow. So my invitation to you this day is this. Where inside your life, where inside your business, are you not fully speaking your truth because you're just afraid it's going to rock the boat? And how maybe possibly by you fully speaking your truth, will it actually bring transformation to your organization, to your family, but also to you? Because you start to realize how powerful you are. And there's a paradox in this invitation. There's a way for somebody to take what I'm saying here today and be like, oh, I'm speaking my truth. And as a result, they're creating massive amounts of chaos. There's a paradox in this. One where you get to become aware of, are you quote unquote speaking your truth because you're using it to create a false sense of significance? Because if that's the case, that's not truly speaking your truth. That's you posturing and pretending and inflating. See, truly speaking your truth is, it has to be said. It's an overflow of who you are. It has to be said. It must be said. You're not getting off on it. You're not getting significance from it. It is just like, this must be said. Just like if this woman was, like it's easy for me to say as a man, I suppose. Yet I've heard stories from my grandmother that have helped influence my decision making on this. If I was standing in the hallway and somebody grabbed my ass in front of everybody and I didn't like it and I didn't want it, I would be the guy that would turn around and be like, who the fuck do you think you are? In front of everybody. I would be the one willing to make a scene. Oh, you need to tone it down. No, I don't need to tone it down. You need to stop being a fucking pervert. You need to get your fucking shit together. Like, I would be that dude. And I hope more and more people would be that woman or that man, because there's certain things that must be stood for at all cost. And the thing is it's bullshit fears that keep people from speaking their truth, when the reality is the fears are just bullshit to keep us safe. Most people are terrified to speak their truth because they're afraid of being dominated by being that vulnerable with somebody. That's the truth. The money and all the other shit is just bullshit justifications of why they're just not willing to lean in and face their fears. And again, this episode may catch me a lot of heat, but it is what it is. So I hope this episode is like inspiring you in some way to step up, honor your own values, speak your truth, and step into your sovereignty. And I know there's going to be some people who listen to this who are going to listen to this episode through a lens of their victimhood, and then they're going to blame me potentially. And if it is that, it is that. And there's going to be other people who listen to this who are going to be inspired because they're like, you're right. More and more people would be benefited by standing in their sovereignty. And my hope is that as you listen to this, you're one of these people. My hope is this empowers you to stand in your sovereignty, to stand for your values, to walk with integrity within those values, and to lead powerfully. So, my friend, that's going to do it for this episode of the Anthony John Amick's podcast. If this served you, inspired you in some way, I would love to hear about it. Simply tag me. Take a picture of this, of you listening on your device, and then tag me over on Instagram stories using @AJAmix. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you're doing awesome. Till next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amick's podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamix.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.